On that simple street with old houses and rusty gates, everyone knew Donna Helena. It was impossible not to notice his presence. The steps were slow, almost dragging, as if each movement carried the weight of years of invisible battles. The clothes, always worn and a little out of fashion, revealed little care for appearance, but silently hid the marks of a life that had not been easy. And the look, oh, that look, deep, tired, distant. It was as if behind the old woman's eyes there was a collection of stories that no one else wanted to hear. To the young people in the neighborhood, Donna Helena was just the grumpy old lady from the end of the street, always ready to complain about the noise of the bicycles, the loud laughter at the gate, the music that invaded the Sunday afternoon, always closed in her solitude, as if she took pleasure in pushing people away. He was an easy target for malicious comments, hidden giggles, and indifference. Among those young people was Lucas, a boy in a hurry, always with headphones on and cell phone in hand. I had no patience for the elderly woman who lived next door. When she complained, he rolled his eyes. When she asked for silence, he responded with irony. Sometimes he would make fun of her to his friends, laughing at her quirks, her scoldings, her old-fashioned way of being. And often he treated her with a coldness that hurt more than any words. For Lucas, Donna Helena was nothing more than a daily nuisance, a constant reminder that getting older felt sad, dull, and lonely. He believed that his neighbor was just a woman with nothing to offer, a person who had already lived through it all and who now only made other people's lives difficult. But there was something Lucas couldn't imagine, because every silence of that woman hid more than grumpiness. Every tired look carried an untold story. Every seemingly rude gesture hid pains he would never understand, not until the day life decided to reveal the truth. And the would not come gently. It would come as a shock, like an unexpected blow, capable of changing not only the way he saw his neighbor, but the way he saw the world, life, and even himself. It's curious how we judge so easily, how we look at someone and believe we know their story, their choices, their mistakes. Lucas did that too. It was easier to laugh, to mock, to turn away. It was easier to believe that Donna Helena was just a bitter old woman than to try to understand the reason for that loneliness. But destiny, patient and inevitable, always finds the right time to open the eyes of those who refuse to see. At that time, Lucas still didn't know that her life was linked to his in a way he could never have imagined, and that soon a single event would be enough to tear down all the walls of prejudice that he himself had built. What no one in the neighborhood knew was that Donna Helena had once been much more than the annoying old woman on the street. She had been an inspiration, a strength, a voice, and a path for many people. But the scars of the past had silenced all of that. Only the shell remained, the one that everyone saw, judged, and rejected. And that's precisely where life's greatest trap lies, believing that people are only what they appear to be today, without imagining the struggles they've faced, the victories they've achieved, the dreams they once had. Lucas was about to find this out the hard way, and once he found out, there was no going back. Everything seemed routine, the same silence on the street, the same hurried coming and going of the neighbors, the same indifference between walls and gates. Until, one ordinary afternoon, fate decided to show its cruelest face. Lucas returned home, distracted, with headphones on and his mind occupied with things he considered too important to notice the world around him. But suddenly, a strange sound cut through his distraction. A dull thud, like something falling heavily to the ground. It came from the house next door. Instinctively, he took off his headphones. His heart raced, and his steps, still hesitant, took him to Donna Helena's door. Curious, he approached. He called once, then again, with no answer. The silence seemed heavier than ever. It was then, through the half-open window, that his eyes finally saw. Donna Helena was lying on the floor, motionless. A broken glass lay beside it, a trickle of blood running down his wrinkled forehead. She didn't move. For a moment, Lucas froze. The world seemed to stop, as if the air had been knocked out of his lungs. The old woman he had so often ridiculed was there on the brink of the abyss between life and death, and it was at that moment that something inside him changed. His heart, which had been beating indifferently until then, raced in a strange way, as if trying to compensate for the years of coldness he had felt towards that woman. Without thinking twice, he ran. He broke down the door, knelt beside her, calling her name in a trembling voice. There was no answer. "Help!" he cried, with a desperation he had never imagined he would feel. Within minutes the neighbors appeared, frightened. Rescue was called, and the ambulance arrived. Lucas helped as much as he could, holding the elderly woman's hand while the paramedics did their work. And for the first time he looked at her not as the grumpy old woman, but as a fragile life in danger. When the ambulance left, taking Donna Helena towards the hospital, Lucas felt a strange emptiness. It was as if something bigger than just a neighbor in distress had been left behind. He felt, even without understanding, that his life would never be the same again. At the hospital, the waiting room felt suffocating. Seconds turned into hours, and each announcement in the hallway increased the tension. Lucas, restless, didn't know whether to sit, walk, or pray. All he knew was that, for the first time, he cared. And it was there, in that cold and silent environment, that the truth, kept hidden for years, began to come to light. He heard one nurse comment to another, "Donna Helena? Oh, yes, she was a teacher, wasn't she?" Many speak of her with such affection. Lucas's eyes widened. Teacher? That woman he believed to be just a lonely grump. Had she been an educator? Minutes later, an older neighbor approached, excited. "I studied with her," he said with a choked voice. "If it weren't for Donna Helena, I would never have learned to read properly. She helped her students like no one else." Lucas's heart sank. It was as if a curtain began to open before him. And what was behind her didn't match the image he had of the old woman at all. More revelations came. Other residents remembered with gratitude how Donna Helena had dedicated her life to teaching. She had helped poor children, believed in young people everyone else had disbelieved, reached out to entire families in times of need. And then, the hardest blow, discovered that his own father had been her student, that he had received encouragement and words of encouragement from that very woman whom, years later, his son began to treat with contempt. Lucas's legs trembled. It was as if the ground had disappeared. The neighbor he saw as a burden was, in fact, an essential part of his own family's history. There, in that hospital room, Lucas understood something he had never stopped to think about. People are not just what we see today. Behind every tired face there is a story. Behind every silence there are battles fought in secret, and often what we consider to be grumpiness or bitterness is just the scar of a life of struggles, losses, and sacrifices. He didn't yet know how to face this revelation, but I was sure of one thing. I would never look at Donna Helena the same way again. While waiting for news, time seemed to play tricks on Lucas. The clock's hands kept turning, but for him, each second felt like an eternity. The hospital waiting room was filled with sounds, doctors' hurried footsteps, the distant beeping of machines, rapid conversations between nurses, but inside there was only silence. A suffocating, heavy silence that seemed to amplify every beat of his heart. It was then that he accidentally overheard a conversation between two nurses who were passing by in the corridor. "Donna Helena?" One of them said in a tone of recognition. "Ah, yes. She was a teacher, wasn't she?" "Yes, she was," the other replied, smiling lightly. "She had dozens of students, maybe hundreds. Many of them only got to where they are today because she believed in them." The words entered Lucas's ears like a wave crashing suddenly, sweeping everything away. Teacher? He repeated it mentally, trying to fit this new information into the image he had always had of his neighbor, the grumpy old woman he had ridiculed so often, who complained about the noise and lived alone behind her closed windows. Had she actually been responsible for educating and transforming lives? A lump formed in his throat, and suddenly scenes from his childhood came to mind. He remembered the times when his father would tell him, in the midst of random conversations, about a teacher who had changed his destiny. He spoke with gratitude, almost always emotional, saying that he would not have moved forward without the strength and patience of that woman who believed in him when no one else did. Lucas's heart raced. The penny dropped, painfully and inevitably. That teacher whom his father spoke of so fondly was the same woman he despised every day, the same one he treated coldly, the same one he never cared to hear. It was as if a violet light had turned on before his eyes. Suddenly all of Donna Helena's gestures, the silence, the grumpiness, the simple clothes, the tired look took on new meaning. These were not signs of someone bitter and empty, as he believed. They were scars, deep scars from a life of surrender, loneliness, and ingratitude. She wasn't just a bothersome neighbor. She was a living part of her own family's history. It was one of the reasons his father had been able to build what he had. And without her, perhaps not even he, Lucas, would have had the comfortable life that she took for granted. The revelation fell upon him like an avalanche, and with it came an unbearable weight, the weight of guilt. Every mocking laugh, every word of contempt, every look of indifference, now came back, like a sharp blade cutting into his conscience without mercy. How did he not notice before? How could you be so blind, so arrogant, so cruel? Lucas lowered his head and brought his hands to his face. The tears previously held back finally began to flow. They weren't just tears of sadness. They were tears of regret, of shame, from someone who, for the first time, saw the greatness hidden behind appearances. As I waited, memories came to mind like flashes. He remembered the times he had passed saying hello, the times he made fun of the way she spoke, the times he slammed the gate hard just to irritate her. And with each memory he felt as if a part of him broke even further. Fate, cruel and ironic, now forced him to face the truth. And the truth hurt. But that revelation was just the beginning. That same night, As he sat in the waiting room, a lady approached. She was carrying a small bag in her hands, and her eyes were teary. She introduced herself as a former student of Donna Helena. If it weren't for her, the woman began, her voice trembling, I wouldn't have learned to believe in myself. I came from a very poor family. No one thought I had a future. But Donna Helena, she never gave up on me. Lucas listened in silence. Each word was like a punch to his chest. And as more people arrived, former students, older neighbors, even employees of the school where she had worked, the same story repeated itself with different details, but with the same common thread. Donna Helena's generosity and dedication had left eternal marks on the lives of dozens of people. And Lucas, sitting there, realized how small he had been before the immensity of that woman. As the night wore on, a thought hammered at his mind. What if she doesn't resist? What if I don't get a chance to apologize? What if I can never show that I learned my lesson again? The fear of loss began to consume every part of him. The idea that that woman could leave without knowing how much he regretted it was unbearable. He needed the chance to look into her eyes and say, "Thank you, forgive me." But time seemed to play with his feelings. Every minute was torture, and the outcome was still uncertain. At that moment the weight of arrogance fell upon Lucas like an unstoppable avalanche. It was as if suddenly everything he believed about Donna Helena was reduced to dust. He who had so often mocked his neighbor now saw the greatness that had always been before him, but which his own blindness refused to see. In the following days Lucas could not shake off his regret. Every harsh word he had said, every time he had treated her with contempt, came back like a painful echo in her conscience. But along with this regret, a new desire was also born, to repair, even if only in part, the wound that he himself helped to deepen. And that's how he started visiting Donna Helena in the hospital. At first shy, almost embarrassed. But it was enough to hear the first story told to feel that there was a whole world hidden behind that silent woman. She spoke of her students with affection, remembering names, dates, smiles. He spoke of how he believed in every child that passed through his hands, even when no one else did. And with each story, Lucas felt his heart open, as if he were also a late student of that teacher who still had so much to teach. When she finally returned home, Donna Helena did not return alone. She brought with her someone who had previously been just a distant neighbor, but who was now willing to be a true friend, Lucas, the boy who before had no patience for her grumpiness, now struggled to carry her groceries, fix her door, take care of the garden she loved so much, but no longer had the strength to maintain. And in the simple, everyday life, he discovered something transformative. The value of a life is not in appearance, nor in what others see on the outside. It's in the invisible marks, in the stories told in silence, in the gestures of love that survive time. He understood that behind every tired look there could be a lifetime of struggles and love, and that respecting our elders is not just a duty. It is a way of honoring everything they have already given to the world. Lucas then realized that the biggest mistake we can make is to judge without knowing. Because no one carries wrinkles without having cried, no one carries silence without having suffered, no one carries loneliness without having lost. Every person we meet is a universe, and if we look more carefully, perhaps we will discover silent heroes living alongside us.